What's up, everyone? Jeremy Gerard from Mythic Customs here with one of my short customizing tutorial videos. In this video, I'm going to share my little cheats for when I'm trying to do paint matching on Mythic Legions figures. So paint matching is one of the more challenging parts, I would say, of painting and customizing Mythic Legions. And what I mean by paint matching is you're starting with a base body of some kind, and you're painting either a custom like 3D printed part or even another Mythic Legions part or a part from another toy line. You're painting something else and you want to match that base body that you are putting it onto. You see a lot of people in the different Facebook groups and so forth asking if anyone has a paint match for this figure or that figure. Very, very common question. The reality is there are a number of artists out there, a number of customizers that are wonderful at this. They're really, really careful about finding really, really good paint matches, having specific recipes and formulas to create really close paint matches to existing Mythic Legions figures. I, unfortunately, am not one of those customizers. Whenever I paint match something, it's usually dumb luck and blind guessing that is allowing me to make that paint match. So, because I don't have all the formulas and I don't take the careful time to create the recipes for exact paint matches that some of my peers do, I also like to cheat. I like to cheat and find ways to make those paint matches be not as difficult to do. So I'm going to share those with you today. Now, first off, one thing to acknowledge is the paints that come on Mythic Legions figures from the factory, those are created at the factory in China. The paints that they use at the factory in China are not available to us here in the United States. So if you've checked back, my previous video about the paints that I use, if you've heard any Mythic Legions customizer talk about the paints they prefer, brands like Vallejo and Citadel and Army Painter, or even some of the craft store brands like DecoArt and CraftSmart, the factories don't use any of those. So there are instances where just by luck, there is an off-the-shelf paint color that is a close, very close match sometimes to an existing Mythic Legions figure. Those are nice. It's nice when that happens, but it's not frequent. So a lot of times you do have to do a mix of different paints to get something close. That's where those formulas I was just telling you about come in. And that's where my cheats come in. So say, for instance, you're trying to match this figure here, right? This is the Barbarian Builder Kit, very popular, most popular Mythic Legions figure to date, from that very first wave, from All-Stars, from the upcoming reinforcements, Barbarian Builder. Now, if I take off his head, say that I was popping another custom head on here and I had to paint match it. This is going to be a high level of difficulty. And the reason for that is because the head that I put on this peg here is pretty much touching this body here. So the flesh color of the torso and the arms, if it doesn't match the flesh color of that face, you're very likely going to see that there is a problem. The same thing will happen if you do this with like one of the bare-chested orcs. So if you had like the Colosseum orc that has the bare green chest and you pop that head off and you pop another orc head on and you want to paint it to match, if it doesn't match that torso pretty much exactly, you're going to see that difference. Now, on the flip side of that, if you take a figure like this character here, this is Vorthog from the new Mythic Legions Irithyr wave. This figure, even though you've got orc green on the head, on the arms, on the legs, the feet, the hands, notice that the head and all those other orc green parts are separated. They're separated by the armor. So because the parts don't actually touch each other, there's a little bit of a level that you can fudge with that. And that's my first tip that I'm going to show you here. Separate the parts with some kind of armor. Let me share my screen. So there we go. So this is a custom Fury Jaguar Jaguarian that I did. It uses a custom head from Planetary Dog Toys, and I wanted to match it to the red of the Fury Clan Orc. I did a whole series of Fury Clan figures, all different races: elves, dwarves, goblins, Jaguarians. So I wanted to really build out that Fury Clan, and I used that red body as my base. What you can see I did here, and this one actually does use a custom torso from Planetary Dog Toys as well, but the Fury Clan Orc itself actually does have an armored torso that separates the arms from the head. So those parts aren't exactly touching. So that's my first cheat. My first cheat is try to find recipes where the parts you're trying to somewhat match don't actually touch. If the head that you're matching doesn't actually touch any flesh on the torso, if it's instead an armored torso, it is going to be so much easier for you to match, because as long as you get close, what happens is your eyes have to break from the arm or the leg to the armor to the head. So you're not actually touching, seeing it really side by side. The way that we discern colors, we won't see, if it's a slight difference, we won't see it as dramatically as if they are actually touching. Share something else here for another example to illustrate this. Okay, so in this particular case here, this is another kind of separation, but you can see that in this particular case, I do have a beer chest. This is another custom Jaguarian I did, also using a custom head from Planetary Dog Toys. These are separated by the cat's kind of mane. So that almost like white beard that goes around the cat's head, that actually separates the skin of the cat's face from the torso itself. It's yet another way to separate those two parts. You would see the same thing with, say, a dwarf head that has a beard. If you have to paint match the dwarf's face and the dwarf's head, but then there's a long beard and that's what touches the body, you might actually have that degree of separation between the flesh skin type color of the head and the flesh skin color of, say, the torso or the arms or whatever. So separating them with armor, separating them with just parts that are naturally, organically part of the sculptures themselves, that will help make it a lot easier. Another interesting thing you'll notice too is, like for instance, on that Vorthog, if you actually look at the greens, if you, for instance, take off the shoulder pads here and you look at the greens of the arm, it's not one consistent color. It's not just one flat color. There's a lot of different shading in there. There's multiple shades of green in there. So that's another thing that you can do too, is if you're trying to match something like this orc, it doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect match. As long as you're within this family of colors that are already represented on the figure, there's a good chance that it's going to look like it fits. Okay, my second way that I cheat, and this is probably my favorite cheat to use, is what I did here on this Tundra Orc, and that is to blend the colors. So this figure started out life as a Kronoff figure. That blue torso, that blue left upper arm, those are the blue from Chrono. And what I did was I got a custom head that's actually from Emil Wickman, and I popped that on here. Now the Chrono body is a very specific blue. So to match it perfectly was really, really difficult for me. One of the things I love to do is to paint the head and then kind of blend in that color. And this works really, I'm talking in this example with a beer torso. This wouldn't matter if it was an armored torso. But with that beer torso, I don't necessarily have to paint the entire torso that same color, because that's just literally repainting the whole body, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in this particular case, what I like to do is whatever I paint the head, just blend that color in slightly on the neck and into the top of the chest. So you got to get close, but if the blues are close, or whatever color you're dealing with, if the color of the head and the color of the body are close, and then you do a subtle transition from where the neck is into the torso, it'll flow nicely from that custom repainted head to the custom paint that you are adding to the neck that blends in to the actual rest of the torso. That transition will look organic, and it will actually kind of look a little bit like that Vorthog I just showed you, having multiple different colors that really add some depth to the flesh itself. So that's my second cheat. My second cheat is to actually, whatever color you are painting, blend that color into the surface area that already exists in a way that the transition doesn't go right from custom head and stop right at the neck where a different color starts. Blend it in nicely and it will really flow well. As I just mentioned, to kind of give a little foreshadowing here, the last option that you can do is just paint the whole darn thing. Okay, there's a lot of times when I'm creating a custom where I'm just literally going to paint not only the custom head, but the body parts itself that I'm trying to match it to. In this particular case, this is my Orc Cleric, and that upper body started as a Chrono as well. So this was a blue similar to the Tundra Orc we just saw. What I did here was when I built this, I didn't have any green orcs available. So I wanted to make a green orc, and I said, you know what? I'm going to use the Chrono body. What I did first was I based it all out in a flat color. So let's see here. Let me take this off. I'll show you. This is the spray paint that I love to use, this Krylon Color Master Flat Black. This is my go-to spray paint whenever I'm with parts and I want them to be all a consistent color. I don't use primer. I use this. I do a nice base coat of black. So that's what I did here. I based out Chrono, his arm and his torso in black. I based out that custom head. Let me bring it back up. Based out that custom head. So then when I painted the green, yeah, they're going to be consistent. They're going to match because I was painting all of them. That's exactly what I did here. And that is my third cheat. So my cheats are to get as close as you can with the paints, but separate the body parts, separate the parts you're painting with armor. So when they're not touching, when they're not right up against each other, it's a higher level of flexibility that you have. There's more room for error where it will still look really, really good. Number two is to blend the actual colors in. Whatever you are painting, whatever custom part you're painting, bring that slightly into whatever part it is touching so there's more of a natural transition between the colors. And my last cheat is just to paint the whole darn thing itself. Whatever needs to actually touch, paint those pieces so it matches because it's all custom paint, right? Hopefully that helps you. If you are struggling with how to paint match, certainly you can, go on the Cabal or go on whatever, customizing group you find helpful and ask if they have any suggested paint matches. I'm not saying don't do that because honestly, I do that as well. But getting those paint matches, a lot of times you're going to find it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this color. They're not exact measurements. It's really hard to measure out the paints exactly, I find. So even if you are getting suggestions from some of those customizers I mentioned who are really good at picking up paint match recipes, even if you get their suggestion, I think my cheats will help you as well to create pieces that ultimately work better together. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, hit me up in the comments. I always love that back and forth. So if you have questions, I can answer them directly in the comments of this video. Certainly, if you find my channel useful and helpful and you find it entertaining, please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already done so. Until next time, I can't wait to see what you make.